Camera 1.
Rock and roll.
Camera 2. And audio anytime you're ready.
Okay. First question, should we
have
just
a
start
question?
talking?
You just talk. You said you were going to talk on the fly.
Well, it's so nice to see you here today. Glad you could make it.
So we're telling stories
Yeah,
from
family tales.
from a long time ago?
Whatever.
From when I was born?
Sure.
At the very beginning?
Sure.
Okay. I was actually born in Copenhagen, Denmark. And I was born in 1940, just when the war started. So we, it was very poor. And we lived in, all I can remember is we lived in this apartment complex. And it was like 2 bedrooms, and it was built just as the war started. So they hadn't finished it. So we only had a little space heater that we had to put coal in to heat. And we only heated 1 room because coal was hard to come by. And then we had 2 bedrooms. My parents had a small bedroom, and we 5 children had the other bedroom. And there was a big span between our children because my father had gone to Canada and married my mother, who lived in Winnipeg. And then they came back to Denmark, and my oldest brother was born in Canada because my dad was born in Denmark, so he wanted to go back home. And so then the war broke out and they couldn't go back, and my mother really, really wanted to go back home. But in the meantime, they had 4 more children, and the war broke out, and it was difficult particularly for her, because she didn't speak Danish. And so I don't remember very much of this because I was way too young. But I do remember one time I was in this little green bed, and I was taken out of the bed and went down in the bomb shelter and ate cookies. That's about all I can remember of the war. My brothers, who are older, obviously tell us very different stories. So then when I was about 11 or 12, we were trying to get back to Canada. And my oldest brother helped because he was already an adult and had made money. So he and my other brother and my dad came back to Winnipeg, where my mother's family was, and then saved some money. And then about a year after, my mother and my brother and my sister and I came. And actually, I have some pictures because a couple of years ago, we went to Halifax. And in Halifax, they have a museum called Pier 21, where all the people from 1929, I think, on to in the early 50s, when people started flying to immigrate. And at Pier 21, I knew that they had records of all the people that had arrived. So I was so excited because I thought, oh, they should have a fancy plaque there saying Bridget came to Canada in this museum. So anyhow, we went there with Darlene, and we researched it. And I went to the office and said, you know, I came to Canada, I think in the fall of 1953. And this is stories from Pier 21, and lots of people have told stories about Pier 21, like immigrants like myself. And so it's fascinating, and it was really fascinating for me because I was only 13 years old when I came, and we had come from Denmark to Rotterdam by train, and in Rotterdam we boarded a ship, And I think it took us 8 days to get to Halifax. And in the meantime, I had been sick, but I didn't tell anybody. So I had this kidney problem, and I stayed in this room on the boat all the time. And the boat, which was called, where was it here? Anyhow, the people found all this good stuff, and it was called Grottebeer. And it's a very small boat when you think about it. In those days, it was only 455 feet long and 62 feet wide. And anyhow, so this boat we found in that museum, because I went in there and I said, I remember coming in that phone. She said, oh, well, these are the ships that came in that time period. So they found the boat. And she said, you have to go on the computer to find all the other documentation because we only have this small bit of information. But she says, they give us a small list of passengers just to show the authenticity of the story. So she went on the computer and said, and we were part of the 10%. So up came my name, my mother's name, my brother's name, my sister's name. It was so exciting. I was so excited because going back before so you go into this museum and it's just authentic. Like you come on this gangplank to go, like you just came off the ship. That's how they made the museum. And then they have this big hall, and there's like wooden benches that everybody, that we had to sit in, and the customs officer was at a small wooden desk up at the front. So I sat down on this bench, and I said to John, I remember this. I remember sitting here when I was a little girl. And it was so exciting and so, yeah. So, and so then with all this other information, and they have this wonderful museum that we walk through, and it shows when people in those days immigrated, they knew they were never going home. So they took everything with them. And they have displays of what people would bring. And one of them, like the bicycles and, excuse me, like bicycles and stuff like that. And again, it made me remember that when my mother wanted to go to Canada from Denmark, she was a seamstress in Denmark. She made beautiful children's clothes for a department store. So her sewing machine was her income, her livelihood. So she wanted to take a threadle sewing machine back. It was a big thing like this. So my brothers built her a box to put the sewing machine in. But he was young. I think he was 16 or so, and he made this at school. And he had measured the sewing machine, but he didn't allow for the wood, the width of the wood, so it didn't fit in. So instead of building a new box, they just cut part of the sewing machine wood part off, threw it in the box, and sent it to Canada. So people take the strangest things with them. That was really, so that museum was really, really interesting for me. So then we had to go from Halifax, and again, because I was sick, we stayed there for a little while with some people that we knew that had immigrated a little bit earlier. And then we went on the train to Winnipeg. And it was such a long, I don't know how many days. It was a long time. And there was no sleeping car, there was no nothing. It was just the train. And there was no dining car on it. The train would stop periodically, and somebody would go out and find some food in the train station, restaurant or something to buy food. So my brother was sent out, as I say, he was 16, and we would stay on the train. And he comes back one time. This is a funny story. So in Denmark, you eat a lot of pork, and especially at Christmas, you eat a big leg of pork. So he came back with this can, and it said pork and beans. So we call it fläskesteg. It's the roast. And he says, "Oh, I found fläskesteg." And we open it, and beans, we don't eat a lot of beans, so this was very foreign food. And so we ate this cold food for days. And then finally we came to Winnipeg. And my mother was, of course, so excited because she hadn't been seeing her family in 25 years. And so we got off the train, and there was nobody there. Not my father, not my brothers, not her family. And we waited and we waited and we waited. And finally, we took a taxi to my grandparents' house, and there was nobody there. So we sat and waited outside, and finally, all the cars came. They'd gone to the wrong train station. So that was so nice. So yeah, so then we lived in Winnipeg but my brothers and my father worked in the shipyards in Denmark. There's not many shipyards in Winnipeg, Manitoba. So eventually we immigrated then and came to Vancouver, which was years later. It was a good thing. Yeah. In the meantime, I picked him up in Winnipeg.
63 years.
60, you're good. 63 years ago.
I
Yeah,
have to be.
yeah.
I want supper tonight.